The very first time I ever had to make a call in the middle of a crisis, I dialed my mother. And when it came down to the last call she ever needed to make during her own emergency, she reached out to me. That's not some random coincidence. That's what you get after 53 years of showing up for each other, one small, everyday act of love at a time. My mom, Margaret Collins, wasn't complicated at all. She never needed to be. She was the kind of mother who showed up to every single one of my Little League games, sitting there in a folding chair she brought from home like it was part of the uniform. She packed my lunches until I hit that age where I started feeling embarrassed about it, and every time I came home late, she'd be up waiting. Not because she wanted to punish me, she just couldn't rest until she knew I made it back safe. That's who she was. That's who she always had been. Love wasn't something Margaret Collins talked about out loud. It was something she lived out every single day, quietly, without ever keeping score or asking for anything in return. When my dad passed away 12 years ago, on a Wednesday morning in November, one of those days that changes how a whole month feels forever, she didn't fall apart. She handled her grief the same way she handled everything else, with dignity, head held high. She sold one of the cars to pay for the funeral and didn't even tell me until it was already done. She kept the house running on a fixed income and still managed to put a hot meal on the table every Sunday for whoever showed up. And not once, not a single time in 12 years, did she call me to say she was struggling. So you've got to understand something. When Margaret Collins called me at exactly 7:42 on a Wednesday morning and told me her chest felt funny, there wasn't even a moment of hesitation. I didn't stop to think, didn't weigh options, didn't calculate anything. A lifetime, 53 years of that kind of love doesn't raise a man who hesitates. It raises a man who moves, immediately and without question. What it doesn't prepare you for, though, is someone standing between you and the door when you're trying to get to her. Welcome to Dad's Raw Revenge. Get comfortable because this story's going to take you somewhere. Go ahead and drop a comment letting me know where you're watching from, hit that like button, and make sure you're subscribed. Trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this. But let me rewind a little bit. My name is Daniel Harper. I'm 53 years old, I coach youth baseball on the weekends, and for most of my life I thought keeping the peace in my marriage meant I actually had peace. Turns out I was wrong about that. Took me a long time to figure it out, but I finally did. It was Wednesday, January 14th, 7:42 in the morning. I remember the exact time because I was standing in the kitchen watching the coffee drip, slow and steady like even it wasn't in a hurry to start the day, when my phone buzzed on the counter. "Mom!" I picked it up on the second ring. Wesley. Her voice sounded thin, not like her at all. Margaret Collins didn't do thin. This was a woman who had made it through losing her husband, a recession, and even a hip replacement without asking anybody for a single thing. "Mom, you okay?" "I didn't want to bother you." There it was, 82 years old, and she was still apologizing for taking up space. "Funny how that works," I said, already heading toward the hallway. "It's just tight," she said, "and my left arm keeps going." She stopped mid-sentence. "Mom, I'm sure it's nothing. Mom, stop. I'm coming." I hung up and stood there for exactly 3 seconds, just long enough to think. My truck, a 2019 Chevy Silverado, was sitting over at Kowalski's Auto on Flatbush Street. They'd called me the day before about the alternator, said it wouldn't be ready until at least Friday. "Okay, Wesley, think," I told myself. Then it hit me. Eve's car. A silver Honda CR-V, parked out in the driveway, full tank because she'd just filled it up Monday. Eve was upstairs. I could hear the shower running, that long, drawn-out 30-minute shower she took every morning like she was getting ready for a photo shoot. I walked to the bottom of the stairs. "Eve!" The water kept running. "Eve!" The shower shut off. Then there was a long pause. "What?" Not what with concern. More like, "This better be worth it." "I need to borrow your car. My mom's having chest pains." I've got to take her to St. Francis. I'll be right back. Silence. Not the kind where someone's thinking things through, the kind where the decision's already been made and they're just figuring out how to say it. About 30 seconds later, she showed up at the top of the stairs, towel wrapped around her head, robe tied tight, face completely blank. Wesley, I can't today. Eve, my mom's having chest pains. Her left arm. I heard you. She leaned against the doorframe and crossed her arms. Call an ambulance. She doesn't like ambulances. You know that. After what happened when Dad, then call someone else. She was already turning back toward the bedroom. I've got dinner with Joanne and the girls tonight, and I've got a full work day. I'm not spending my entire day sitting in some hospital waiting room. I just stood there, frozen for a second. Did she really just... Eve, I said, my voice quieter than I expected. Her left arm is going numb. She stopped, turned halfway back, and gave me a look I'll never forget as long as I live. There was no concern in it, no guilt, just inconvenience. She's your mother, Wesley, she said, not mine. Then she paused. Figure it out. Figure it out. She walked back into the bedroom and closed the door, softly. No slam, no emotion. Somehow, that made it worse. A slammed door would have meant something. This felt like she was just letting me know we were out of milk. Like an 82-year-old woman losing feeling in her arm was just another scheduling issue she didn't have time for. I stood there for a second, just one, then pulled out my phone. Arthur Bennett lived 4 houses down. Retired union electrician, 71 years old, drove an older Honda Civic that had seen better days but never missed a morning, just like him. He was the kind of guy who still gave a proper handshake. He'd known my mom for over 20 years and sat front row at my dad's funeral. He picked up on the first ring. Wes, what's up, brother? Clinton, I need a favor. My mom's having chest pains. My truck's in the shop and Eve's car isn't an option. Can you take us to St. Francis? He didn't even pause. Give me 4 minutes. I'll pull up front. That was it. No questions, no conditions, no checking his schedule. Just 4 minutes. I called Mom right back. I'm on my way, Mom. Clinton's driving. You don't have to do anything. Just unlock the front door and sit down, okay? You hear me? Sit down. Wesley, I really don't want to make a fuss. Mom, sit down. I heard a small sound on the other end, almost like she was laughing. Okay, baby. Clinton pulled up in 3 minutes and 40 seconds. I remember counting every second of that ride. It took us exactly 9 minutes to get to St. Francis Hospital on Woodland Street. Mom sat in the back seat beside me, her small hand wrapped in both of mine, wearing her good blue coat like she was headed somewhere meaningful, which, truth be told, she was. The whole drive, she kept apologizing. I'm sorry to drag you out, Clinton. It's probably nothing, she said. I was just watching the news anyway, Clinton replied. Was it anything good? She asked. Nothing ever is. And she laughed, actually laughed. I stared out the window at that Hartford morning, feeling 2 things hit me at once. On one side, I felt real gratitude for Clinton. On the other, there was something else sitting there, something cold and quiet when it came to Eve. I didn't try to sort it out just yet. I just let it sit. For a Wednesday morning, St. Francis was already packed. We got checked into the ER at 8:27 a.m., and within about 15 minutes, a nurse named Beverly, broad-shouldered, all business, the kind of woman who'd seen everything twice over, got Mom into a room. The doctor on duty was a tall man named Dr. Victor Hayes. He had a calm way about him, steady hands, and he didn't rush a thing. Mrs. Watson, I'd like to run an EKG and check your enzyme levels, he said. At your age, symptoms like these aren't something we ignore. Mom turned her head and looked at me. Her eyes were asking a question she didn't say out loud. Should I be scared? Just do whatever he says, Mom, I told her. She gave a small nod, then reached up and touched my face. "You came," she said, simple as that, like she wasn't entirely sure I would've. That just about broke me right there. "Mom, I'll always come." She tapped my cheek twice, laid her head back on the pillow and closed her eyes. I spent the next 2 hours and 40 minutes sitting in that waiting room. Plastic chair, harsh lighting, and a TV in the corner playing some game show with the sound off. I grabbed a cup of coffee from a machine near the elevator, worst coffee I've ever had, and I didn't taste a single sip of it. Eve didn't text me once, not even a quick, "Is she okay?" At 11:04, Dr. Cole came out looking for me. His expression was controlled, not panicked, but serious enough to matter. "Mr. Watson," he said, "your mother experienced what we'd call a mild cardiac event. It wasn't a full heart attack, but her body is definitely signaling that something's wrong. We'd like to keep her for observation, run a few more tests, and adjust her medication. The good news is, she's stable." "She's stable?" He nodded, "and she's also asking if there's a television in her room." I laughed, really laughed. "Yeah, that sounds like her." "Can I go see her?" I asked. "Give us about 20 minutes to get her settled." I sat back down, leaned forward with my elbows on my knees, and stared at the floor. "Figure it out," Eve had said. While she went out to dinner with Joanne and her friends, while her mother-in-law's heart was sending out warning signals, I figured it out. "All right." I pulled out my phone and called Clinton, who had stayed in the parking lot the entire time, just waiting, like the kind of man he is. "She's stable," I told him. "Thank God," he said, and I could tell he meant every word. "Clinton, thank you." "Wes," he said, his voice steady and kind, "that's just what people do." I let that hang there for a second. Some people. I stayed with Mom until about 4 p.m. We watched part of a game show, this time with the sound on, and somehow she still managed to beat me twice at a word game she made up right there, using hospital equipment and state capitals. Even on her worst day, she was sharper than me. Always had been. At 3:47, right before I got ready to leave, she reached for my hand again. "Wesley." Her voice had changed. That thin tone from the morning was gone. This was her other voice, the one she used when she meant something. "Yeah, Mom?" Eve didn't come. It wasn't a question. I hesitated for a moment. She had dinner plans. Wesley. Just my name. That was all she needed to say. I looked at her. 82 years old, her blue coat folded neatly over the chair, eyes still sharp and clear. "She went to dinner," I said quietly, "with her friends." Those words landed in that hospital room like something heavy falling from a long way up. Mom didn't gasp. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't even mention Eve by name. She just gave a slow nod and turned her eyes toward the window. The afternoon light was hitting the Hartford skyline just right, golden, quiet, a little tired. She didn't say another word, but I saw something pass across her face. It looked a lot like a decision being made. At 4:02 p.m., I kissed her on the forehead and walked out of St. Francis into that cold Connecticut air. Clinton came back to pick me up, and we rode home in an easy kind of silence. Somewhere along Blue Hills Avenue, with oak leaves blowing past the windshield like the world was letting go of things it didn't need anymore, it hit me. I wasn't angry at Eve anymore. I was done. Now, if you've been following along, do me a quick favor. Go ahead and subscribe. A lot of folks watch without doing it, but it doesn't cost you anything, and it helps more than you know. Hit that like button too, and drop your thoughts in the comments. Some people go through life taking from relationships they never once invested in. Eve had been overdrawn for years. Thursday, January 15th, 6:58 a.m. I woke up before the alarm, which usually means something's weighing on you heavy enough that sleep can't push it aside. I was lying there on my side of the bed. The left side, always the left. 11 years into that marriage, and I still slept like I was leaving room for someone who actually wanted to be there. I stared up at the ceiling. Eve was still asleep, hair spread out across the pillow, breathing slow and steady like nothing in the world could bother her. That woman could sleep through a verdict being read. I got up without making a sound, went downstairs and made coffee. Yes, with the loud machine. And no, I didn't feel bad about it. Not even a little. She picked dinner over my mother's arm, going numb. She could handle the noise. I sat down at the kitchen table and watched the morning light come in through the window above the sink. My phone was lying face down in front of me. I flipped it over. No messages from St. Francis. No news was good news. Right at 7 a.m., my mind went back to Mom. How she looked in that hospital bed, small against the pillow, her good blue coat folded over the chair like she'd dressed up just to be sick. And I kept thinking about the way she touched my face and said, "You came." Like she wasn't entirely sure I would. 2 simple words. You came. But somehow, they carried 82 years of love in them, and they hit me all over again. I was sitting there at the kitchen table, my coffee going cold in my hands, thinking about one simple truth. She always showed up for me. Every single time. No hesitation, no conditions, no questions asked. The absolute least I could do, the bare minimum, was show up for her the same way. I was already halfway through my second cup when I heard Eve coming down the stairs. She walked into the kitchen in her robe, looked at me, then at the coffee machine, and then back at me again. "You made coffee." "Every morning for 11 years, I said, a little surprised she was acting like it was new. "And it's still surprising," she replied. She poured herself a cup and leaned back against the counter. Then came that silence, the kind married people know too well, the kind that just hangs there, waiting for someone to bring up the thing both people are already thinking about. She was the one who finally broke it. "How's Rebecca?" "Rebecca. Not your mom, not Mom, just Rebecca. Like she was some co-worker or someone she'd met once at a company party and barely remembered. "She's stable," I said. "Mild cardiac event. They're keeping her another day." "Another day," she repeated slowly, like she was testing how the words felt. Then came another stretch of silence. "How was dinner?" I asked. She blinked, just once, but I caught it. "It was fine," she said carefully. Then she added, "Wesley, I want you to understand. Yesterday was really complicated for me." "Complicated?" I let that word sit there between us for a second. Your mother-in-law's heart is sending distress signals and you're sitting at a restaurant, but yeah, sure. Complicated. Wesley. Eve. I said her name the same way my mom had said mine the night before. Flat. Final. Just the name. Nothing else. She stopped. "I'm not doing this right now," I said. "I'm just trying to explain." "I know." I stood up, rinsed out my mug, and set it in the sink. "I heard you the first time yesterday, at the bottom of the stairs. I grabbed my phone, my jacket, my keys, and my spare keys too, since my truck was still at Kowalski's. Then I headed for the door. "Where are you going?" she asked. "To see my mother." I didn't turn around. Clinton drove me again. He didn't ask questions, didn't offer opinions, just drove, one hand on the wheel, some old country station playing low on the radio. There's a kind of friendship that doesn't need conversation to work. That's what me and Clinton had. Always did. We pulled into St. Francis at 8:40 a.m. "I'll be here," he said. "Clinton, you don't have to—" "Wes." He looked at me over the top of his glasses. "I'll be here." Some people show up. You notice who they are. You remember it somewhere permanent. When I walked into Mom's room, she was sitting up, color back in her face, that thin voice from the day before completely gone. She'd changed into her own nightgown. Flat out refused to wear the hospital one after the first night, which honestly I respected, and she had her reading glasses on with a crossword puzzle open in her lap. "7 letters, she said the second I stepped inside. "Betray." I stopped right there in the doorway and just looked at her. She peeked up over her glasses with the straightest face I'd ever seen. "For the crossword, Wesley." I laughed so hard a nurse poked her head in from the hallway. "Perfect," I said, dropping into the chair beside her bed. "Perfect." She counted out the boxes, filled it in, and nodded like she'd just solved something important. "You always were the smart one." "I'm your only child, Mom, and still the smart one." We sat there for a while after that, just easy and quiet. The kind of silence you only get between people who've loved each other long enough to not feel the need to fill every second with noise. She knocked out 2 more clues while I drank that awful hospital coffee without complaining. Sitting there with her, even in that stiff plastic chair, sipping something that tasted like regret, was exactly where I wanted to be. Always would be. After a bit, she closed the puzzle book, set it on the table beside her, and folded her hands in her lap. "Here it comes," I thought. "I want to call Paul this morning," she said. Samuel Brooks, attorney, Hartford County, over 30 years in practice. He handled my dad's estate and put together Mom's will about 6 years back. Sharp guy, precise, the kind of lawyer who listens more than he talks, which in my experience isn't as common as it should be. I kept my voice steady. "Okay. I've been thinking," she said, "since last night." "Mom, you don't have to." Daniel Andrew Harper. All 3 names. I hadn't heard that since I was 17 and came home late past curfew. "Do not finish that sentence." I shut my mouth. She looked at me with those steady, clear eyes. Morning light was coming through the window again, softer this time, and it made her look, not younger exactly, but fully herself. The same woman who packed my lunches, stayed up waiting for me, sold a car without telling me, and cooked Sunday dinners for decades on Maplewood Drive. My mother, the one constant in my life. "I've worked my whole life," she said quietly. "Your father and I, we saved, we sacrificed, we went without so that what we built would mean something, so it would go somewhere that mattered." She paused. "To people who show up." I didn't say a word. Eve didn't show up, Wesley. "I know. Not just yesterday." She picked up the crossword book, not to solve anything, just to have something in her hands. "Not at your father's funeral reception. Not when I had that hip surgery and needed rides to physical therapy. Not at Christmas 2 years ago when I was sick and you had to leave dinner to check on me." She looked up at me. "And not yesterday, when my heart was failing. She went to dinner." Each example landed heavy, like stones dropping into still water, slow, deep, undeniable. Because she was right. She had always been right, and I'd been the one making excuses all those years. "Mom, I'm not angry," she said, and the truth was, she wasn't. Her voice was calm, steady as anything. "I'm just being accurate." She reached over to the bedside table, picked up her phone, and pulled out a small folded piece of paper from her glasses case. A phone number was written on it in her neat, careful handwriting. Samuel Brooks, direct line. She'd already thought this through. My mother didn't act on impulse. This had been building for a long time, long before that hospital bed. "Do you want me to step out?" I asked. She paused for a moment, thinking it over. She thought about it for a second, then said, "No, stay." Just one word, stay, and everything inside me went quiet in the best way. Grateful, steady, like I knew I was exactly where I was supposed to be. She made the call at 9:22 a.m., and he picked up on the second ring. "Samuel Brooks." "Paul, it's Margaret Collins. I hope I'm not calling too early." "Mrs. Watson," he said, his voice warming right away. "It's never too early for you. How are you?" "Well, I'm in the hospital at the moment. Saint." "Francis." There was a short pause. "I'm sorry to hear that. Is it serious?" "Serious enough to help me think clearly," she replied. And even then, even from a hospital bed, the morning after a cardiac event, there was dignity in her voice. Real grace. Not the kind you fake, but the kind you build over 82 years of doing the right thing, even when it costs you something. Paul, I need to update my documents. My will, specifically. He went quiet on the other end. Not hesitant, just professional. Taking it in, processing. Of course. Would you like me to come to you? Yes, please. Today, if possible. I have some very specific changes I'd like to make. I can be there by 2 o'clock. Perfect. She glanced over at me. My son will be here as well. Very good, Mrs. Watson. I'll see you at 2. She ended the call, set her phone down, and picked her crossword back up like nothing had just happened. Like she hadn't just shifted the course of everything. Like she hadn't just shown me love in one of the most powerful, permanent ways a mother can. I sat there for a minute, throat tight, trying to keep it together. Mom. My voice came out softer than I meant it to. You don't have to do this for me. She didn't even look up. I'm not doing this for you, Wesley. She filled in a letter, calm, steady. I'm doing it because I've earned the right to decide where my life's work goes, and I've already decided. Then she looked up over her glasses. Any other questions? I had about 40. I asked none. No, ma'am. Good. She went right back to her puzzle. Now go find me something edible from that cafeteria, she added. Whatever they've been feeding me for breakfast tastes like somebody made a decision they regretted. And for just a second, just one, I stood there looking at her. This small, sharp, incredible woman in her own nightgown, sitting in a Hartford hospital room, working on a crossword like the world didn't owe her a thing. And she still owed it everything. And I thought to myself, I've spent 53 years trying to be worthy of her. I just hoped I was getting close. Samuel Brooks showed up at 1:58 p.m. sharp, charcoal suit, leather briefcase, silver hair cut neat and close. He shook my hand with purpose, gave a small nod like a man who understood the weight of moments like this, then sat down across from my mother with a yellow legal pad and a pen that probably cost more than my alternator. I stayed in the corner, quiet. Just a witness. They talked for 47 minutes. I won't repeat every word, some things deserve to stay private, but I'll tell you this. By the time Paul clicked his pen shut and slid that legal pad back into his briefcase, everything had changed. The document Eve Watson had been quietly counting on for 11 years of marriage? It was rewritten. Completely, permanently, legally. The house on Maplewood Drive, paid off back in 2009? Me. The investment accounts my father built over 30 years? Me. The jewelry, the furniture, all of it. Me. That 1967 Ford Mustang sitting under a cover in her garage, the one my dad spent 4 years restoring with his own hands, the one that still smelled like him on warm days when you opened the door. Me. And $20,000 set aside for the Hartford Animal Shelter on Brainerd Road because Margaret Collins had volunteered there every third Saturday for 11 years. That was just who she was. Eve's name? It showed up exactly 0 times. Not my problem, someone once said. Turns out they were right. When Logan stood up to leave, he shook my hand again near the door and lowered his voice. Your mother, he said, glancing back at her, already back to her crossword, already calm, already completely herself, is one of the sharpest people I've met in 31 years of practice. I looked at her too. Yeah, I said. I know. And I always had. I left the hospital around 4:30 that afternoon. Clinton was there, ready to take me home. I got in, shut the door, and he looked over at me the way old friends do, not digging for details, just checking if you're still standing. Everything okay? Yeah, I said quietly. Everything's exactly the way it should be. He nodded, put the car in drive, and we pulled out of St. Francis, heading back toward Asylum Avenue. My phone sat in my pocket the whole time. Silent. Eve hadn't called once. She had no idea what had just happened. None at all. But she would. Friday, January 16th, 8:14 a.m. I was standing at Kowalski's Auto on Flatbush Street when things started moving. My truck was finally ready. New alternator, an oil change Danny Kowalski threw in because our kids used to play Little League together, and even a fresh set of wiper blades I hadn't asked for. That's just how neighbors take care of each other. I was at the counter signing the invoice when my phone buzzed. Eve? I let it ring. Not as some kind of move, not yet. I just didn't have anything to say. Nothing that would land the way it needed to. I slipped the phone back into my jacket, finished up, shook Danny's hand, and stepped out into the Hartford morning. The air was cold, sharp, honest. I started the truck, let it idle, and sat there watching my breath fog up the windshield. I thought about Mom, about bringing her back home to Maplewood Drive, where she belonged, about getting her settled in her kitchen with her tea, her crossword puzzles, and her dignity still fully intact. That's what mattered today. Not Eve. Not the calls. None of that. Today was about bringing my mother home. Then my phone buzzed again. Eve. Then again. And again. By the fifth call, I knew something had shifted. Something was happening. I pulled out of Kowalski's and headed toward St. Francis. I had somewhere to be, someone to take care of. When I got there at 8:53 a.m., Mom was ready. Blue coat on, small overnight bag packed neat like always. Beverly, the nurse, walked beside her, and another nurse followed with the wheelchair. Hospital rules, no exceptions. Mom had already argued about it, and lost, though she handled it with her usual grace. The second we cleared those automatic doors, she stood right up out of that chair. "I can walk to my son's truck," she said loud enough for everyone nearby to hear, like she was making an announcement to the whole building. I had a cardiac event, not a personality removal. Beverly laughed, but it was real laughter this time, not the polite kind she probably used all day. She took Mom's hand in both of hers and held it there for a second. "You take care of yourself, Mrs. Watson." "I always do, baby," Mom said, giving her hand a gentle squeeze. "You're a good one. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise." Beverly pressed her lips together like she was holding something back, then gave a small nod and stepped away. Even in a place like that, even as a patient, my mother had a way of leaving people better than she found them. I opened the passenger door for her, and she climbed in slow and careful, but on her own. That part mattered to her more than anything a doctor could say. Her independence was the last thing she'd ever give up, and we both knew it. I shut the door, walked around, and got behind the wheel. Her eyes drifted down to my phone sitting in the cup holder, lighting up every half minute. Eve. 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 11 missed calls before 9 in the morning. Mom didn't say a word. She just clicked her seatbelt into place and looked out the window with a faint smile, the kind of smile you get when you've already made up your mind and found peace with it. I took her home first, back to Maplewood Drive. The white colonial with the green shutters sat there at the end of the block, quiet and familiar. That house held everything: learning to ride a bike in the driveway, homework at the kitchen table, my dad building a life piece by piece and leaving it standing when he was gone. The oak tree out front had dropped most of its leaves. The porch was clean. The welcome mat still said home, faded from years of being stepped on. I hadn't noticed it in a long time, but that day I did. I got her inside, made her tea, chamomile, steeped exactly 4 minutes because she'd told me once years ago and I never forgot. I checked the thermostat, looked through the fridge, and then went over her new medications from Dr. Cole one by one, reading the labels out loud while she sat there with her hands wrapped around her mug. "Wesley. This one's for blood pressure, twice a day with food," I said. She was watching me from across the table. That same table where she baked every birthday cake, helped me through algebra, and sat with me the morning after my dad died, holding my hand without saying a word, because some things don't need words. "Sit down," she said gently. I sat. She reached across the table and took my hand in both of hers. Small hands, warm hands, the same hands that packed my lunches, buttoned my coat, waved from the bleachers, and held mine in the back seat of Clinton's car just 2 days ago. Those hands had been showing up for me my whole life. "I need you to really hear me," she said. "I'm listening, Mom. What I did, with the will, I didn't do it to punish Eve." Her eyes were steady. No anger, no bitterness. Just truth, the way she always gave it. Simple, warm, and impossible to argue with. "I did it because it was the right thing to do. Your father and I built something together, and it belongs with someone who understands what it means to build something with another person." She squeezed my hand once. "You understand that?" I did, not just in my head, in my bones. "And Wesley," her voice shifted, not softer, just more intentional. "I need you to think about your life, not about the money, not about any of this." She gestured lightly, like she meant everything and nothing all at once. "I mean, whether you're actually happy, whether you're loved the way you deserve to be loved." She held my gaze for a long moment. "Because you've been showing up alone for a long time, baby. And a man like you, a man who shows up, deserves someone standing beside him when he does." The kitchen went completely still. Outside, a car rolled slowly down Maplewood Drive. The fridge hummed. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked twice, then stopped. Everything she said was true. Every word of it. My throat tightened and I felt that burn in the corners of my eyes, but I didn't look away. "Yeah," I said quietly, my voice rough but honest. "I know, Mom." She nodded once, slow and sure, like that was exactly what she needed to hear. Then she patted my hand twice, same way she'd done in the hospital, and let go. "Good." She took a sip of her tea, set it down, and glanced at the table. "Now, are you going to answer that phone or not?" My phone was buzzing again between us. Eve. Call number 29. I looked at the screen, then back at Mom. She raised one eyebrow. I picked up the phone, flipped it face down, and let it buzz against the table until it stopped. "Not yet," I said. The corner of her mouth lifted just a little. "Not yet," she repeated like she understood exactly what that meant. "I'll check on you tonight," I told her, "and tomorrow morning, and every morning after that." She waved her hand like it was already settled. "I know you will. I mean it, Mom." "Wesley," she said, looking at me over her glasses. I hadn't even noticed when she put them back on. "I know you mean it." "You always have." I left Maplewood Drive at 1:15 that afternoon, drove back to Asylum Avenue, pulled into the driveway behind Eve's silver CR-V, and just sat there in my truck for a full minute. 34 missed calls. 34. I finally went inside. Eve was in the living room, sitting on the edge of the couch in her work clothes, both hands wrapped tight around her phone like it was the only thing keeping her steady. She looked up the second I walked in. Her eyes were red, tired, like she hadn't slept. Something about her had changed. That calm, controlled version of herself she always wore like armor? It was cracked, and underneath it was someone who looked like they'd spent the entire day realizing exactly what they'd done. "Good," something quiet in the back of my mind said. "Stay there for a while." "Wesley." She stood up right away. "I've been calling you all day," she said. "I know," I answered, setting my keys on the hook by the door. And in that moment, my mind went straight back to Wednesday night. My mom lying in that hospital bed, wires on her chest, an IV in her arm, machines tracking every beat of her heart. I thought about the EKG, the enzyme tests, the look on Dr. Cole's face when he said her body had been warning her. And then I thought about Eve, sitting at dinner, passing around a breadbasket, laughing with her friends while my mother's heart struggled in the dark. I let that sit in my chest for exactly 1 second. Then I looked at my wife. "Did you know?" she asked, her voice cracking at the very end. "About the will?" No, I said. I didn't know. I turned to face her fully. I found out the same time everyone else did. She pressed her fingers to her mouth, trying to steady herself. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter, more controlled, but underneath it, I could hear it. Fear. Real fear. The kind that shows up when consequences finally catch up to the choices you made. She took me out completely, Eve said. Samuel Brooks's office called to confirm everything was filed, and Wesley, do you understand what that means? Everything we've been expecting. Eve. My voice was calm, steady, maybe steadier than it had ever been. I understand exactly what it means. Then talk to her, she said quickly. Ask her to reconsider. Tell her it was a misunderstanding, that I was going to come to the hospital. You just what? She stopped. I took one step toward her. Not angry, not aggressive, just present. Fully present in a way I hadn't been in years, because I didn't have anything left to protect. You just went to dinner with Joanne and the girls, I said, while my mother was lying in a hospital bed having a cardiac event, while I was sitting in a plastic chair in a waiting room, drinking machine coffee under fluorescent lights. I paused. While Arthur Bennett sat in a parking lot for 3 hours, because that's what people do. The color drained out of her face slowly, like water emptying from a glass. Rebecca made her decision, I said, the same way you made yours. Clearly, deliberately, and without asking anyone for permission. Wesley, please. She has spent 82 years showing up, I continued, my voice still calm, still steady. For my father. For me. For everyone she's ever loved. Not once, not a single time, has she chosen dinner over someone who needed her. I looked at Eve for a long moment. She'd just finally stopped expecting everyone else to do the same. The room went completely quiet. Eve looked at me, really looked at me, like maybe she was seeing me clearly for the first time in years, and I watched something shift in her face. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was deeper than that. It was the look of someone who had finally realized the full weight of what they'd lost. Not the money, not the will. Me. She understood it now. The man standing in front of her, calm, clear, holding his keys, finally at peace, was not the same man who stood at the bottom of those stairs on Wednesday morning, still hoping she'd say yes. That man was gone. Her phone buzzed in her hand. She glanced down. My mother's name lit up the screen. She looked back at me, eyes wide, hope flickering there, just barely. I looked at her for 1 second, and in that second, I felt it. The last thin thread of something I'd been holding onto for 11 years finally loosen and fall away. Not with anger, not with pain, just release. I reached over, took my keys off the hook again. I'm going to check on my mother, I said. I opened the front door, and the Hartford air hit me. Cold, clean, honest. Then I paused and turned back one last time. Eve stood there in the middle of the living room, phone in her hand, my mother's name glowing on the screen. 38 missed calls worth of consequences written all over her face. I looked at her for exactly 1 second, and I felt nothing but clarity. You should probably answer that. I stepped outside and closed the door behind me. Then I exhaled, deep, from somewhere way down inside me, like I'd been holding that breath for years without even knowing it. I stood there on the porch for a moment, letting that January air hit my face. Cold, clean, honest. And for the first time in a long time, something settled over me. Clarity. Not anger, not bitterness, not even that hot, fed-up feeling. Just clarity, the kind that comes when a man finally stops lying to himself. After years of smoothing things over, swallowing words, pretending everything's fine. After years of sleeping on one side of the bed, leaving space for someone who never once moved closer. I was finally seeing my life for what it really was. I hadn't been married for 11 years. I'd been enduring for 11 years. And those are not the same thing. Standing there on that porch, with my mom's voice still in my ears and Eve's face still in my mind, I understood it completely. It wasn't the hospital that opened my eyes. Seeing Margaret Collins in that bed while her daughter-in-law sat at dinner didn't plant a seed. It burned the whole field down and showed me exactly what had been there all along. I walked to my truck, started the engine, and the radio came on low. Some old song my dad used to hum in the garage on Saturday mornings. I let it play. I didn't make any big decisions that night, just one. I wasn't going back into that house. Not that night. And deep down, in that place where a man knows the truth before he's ready to say it out loud, I knew it wasn't just that night. Loyalty and love deserve a legacy. If this story meant something to you, go ahead and hit that like button and subscribe. Join us for more real, raw stories about family, choices, and what really matters. I'll see you in the next one.